This video has been a very long time coming. I recently talked about this guy in my video where I put out my frustrations about bad things in my life and my PTSD, but I have so much to say about this guy that everyone seems to have forgotten was a literal Discord terrorist. He is sitting at a pretty decent 1.1k followers on Twitter and seems not to have addressed his past in any of the tweets. Considering he is an egomaniac, I understand why diffusing any situation by just saying sorry is too much for the kid. He started, as far as my knowledge goes, as a kid by the name of Sea Salt, age 14 on Discord. I met him at a YIF server where we all pretended to be older. I pretended I was the age I am now, 20, and he pretended to be 23. I never intended on dating anyone nor trying to engage in any sexual activity, but no one is saying we were in the right. People started really looking up to me and I was feeling amazing and started relating to the troubles and the common issues of the people who were actually older than me. Turns out later they were almost all underage though. One day, I see Nanofaux, who was the server bot coder, crying about wanting to kill himself in one of the chats and saying that nobody loved him. I specifically kept telling him that I cared because I did. I didn't want him to die, and I thought at that point he was a sweet dude, but only because we never talked that much. He was down to his last words and said, "It doesn't matter if I do, because he's lonely and no one would date him." I swallowed all my pride and I just asked him out, saying if he doesn't kill himself that I'd date him. He got giddy and stopped immediately while I freaked out for asking out a supposedly older man. I just didn't want blood on my hands and I was stupid for all of it. He got in my DMs and started being really sexual almost immediately and started asking favors of me. It's like he was speedrunning a relationship. When I went to bed, he'd constantly call me. When I was in class, he'd text me over 300 times saying, "Danny, Danny, 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 Danny." And it was getting me so angry that I would say vile things to get him off my back. I actually did love him in a way, but no feelings were reciprocated because he was older. I got him to shut up by saying I'd send him a picture of my dick and a video of me stroking off, and he sat patiently. And then I ended it the next day out of cowardice. He raged and shit-talked me and went to everyone to say I was a terrible, abusive lover. But at this point, everyone had enough and banned him anyway. No one really believed this shit, dude. I mean, he did somehow find his way back, and he used his bot to ban over 500 people from the server. The owner, Lefleur, and his French asshole boyfriend ex, Floofy, were devastated and angry, banning the bot. That bot was above any role, and we kept it there out of trust. In my original video, I had forgotten that he actually nuked that server twice. It got up back on its feet before Nano put it out of its misery. After I had co-owned YIF, that was the name of the server, for about a week, my soul was destroyed after I got banned by my ex, who had become the owner. And I was offered a position as owner at one of the mutual's servers, one of my friends, and he had complained that people thought he was a pedophile, and foolish as I am, I took that chance and I became owner, believing his story. Over that time, I told everyone my real age, and the server was SFW. I was making friends and relaxing from my trauma with Nano and Mitch, my ex. But I was also learning new things, such as Nano using his grandmother's identification for verification, which is identification fraud, with some post-picture editing, of course. Revealing his last name as quote-unquote Hunter, which I don't believe is his real last name either. I mean, the dude lied about everything he ever said. There's a document floating around that he made a year ago, or a year and a half later after the incident, where he pointed out that I was desperate for him. But I'll get to that in a bit when I cover it. I was in charge of this server at Cafe Ferris, and it was going great. Built an audience, found my own voice, and even had game nights. I was part of a very poor family, and the phone I had gotten to get on Discord was from a friend who moved away because I was less well off than him. His old Moto Z Plate droid. I loved the damn thing. But being poor, I was always itching for someone to keep me busy. Something. So I went out looking for a BF on some dating servers. Being completely honest about my age and my identity. I was dating, but found out that the person had been cheating on me, and I threw the server away and boxed myself away, feeling that awful feeling I felt too many times in the present day. My hands were shaking, my server gone, and I was thinking of suicidal thoughts, just like how Nano said he felt that one day. It took a while for me to heal, but I did. Made a cafe first too. People there were nice to me, if not a bit reluctant based on my mental health and decisions, but I had admin and mods and lots of channels, and my health was higher than ever before. And over time, the mods and admins stopped listening to me because I never made them work. Some would bring up Nano and tell me they knew victims who I would talk to and share my experience with. All of them wanted revenge, but I told them it's not worth it because no one would believe them or care. Nano was a semi-popular, but considering to this day he has about 100 victims, maybe more, I'd say I was in the wrong for not fighting more and making other victims feel unjustly in the wrong. Some had stories of cheating, some stories of blackmail, him dumping them if they got too close, and just one for racism. He would often use the N-word, but I don't think he was trying to use it in vain or anything like that, but he was just an edgy dumbass who would say it to his black ex. I've not seen these people in ages, but there was no reason not to believe them, as the word was always out in his servers that he was dating people in the 20s and 30s, while also dating people in an open relationship with kids, which is way more fucked up than anything I've ever done. Sure, mess up one guy's life, but letting a kid be in a poly with an adult and you, that's just all kinds of fucked up. The name wouldn't ring any bells nowadays, but since he had recently been banned and made an alt named Toxie, Sea Salt was ringing bells all the time back then. People from any server knew that he was a serial manipulator, and people would call him out to no avail. He has never apologized to any of his victims, and to this day he still hasn't acknowledged it to any of his exes. I think one, but we'll get to that later, and also he obviously doesn't take accountability. Back to Cafe First 2, it had been getting heated between my admin and I, as I was getting sick of them not listening to me. I had 20 helpers, 12 mods, and 10 admin, which is never needed in any server, especially not one with 100 members, and some were leaving, some were banned, and I was so angry I left the server in the hands of an old bud, John Wolf. I came back the next day, clear mind, but turns out he had changed all the roles and colors and named the server Pastel Furs, and already had Prism, the mascot from his old server. I was ridiculed by my staff team, John, and not surprising of all, my exes. It was a weak moment, and I went silent. I talked to some of the people who had been used and abused by Nano, and they were all broken about the fact that Nano was a household abuser name, but no one else would come forth, so we devised a plan to help those come and share their stories in the form of a server open for all. We made the server, and I helped promote it in other servers. It had been made, and within a week, it had pretty good amount of victims telling their stories. At this point, Nano was dating like 6 guys, and we asked one of his boyfriends, and he said he'd get in trouble if he talked. But a few hours later, he got dumped and replaced, and the kid was broken. He told us everything. He told us he was going to kill himself and went offline, and we hadn't seen him ever again. I wish I had a more clear and positive outcome, but Nano is a fucking monster and he wouldn't know what happens to his exes even if he cared. I can't wait to hear him dispute this shit. A lot of people would. Even close friends of mine said that he's been confronted before and he just ignores it, bar one time where he acknowledged it and refused to apologize in a private coding server 2 years ago. It's insane to think that the ignore tactic for abuse victims works, but it does. It's just devastating. It's frustrating. It makes me not even want to make this video, but I was tired of being a victim and I want him to apologize to me and all the other people. But the story just gets worse. I was a co-owner, by the way. They changed the roles to be more downplayed and based on amounts of abuse, which is all kinds of fucked up, but also shitty as fuck because the owners were dating each other and had less. They had been less abused than the rest. I was joking about Nano when one of the owners started downplaying Nano. I was confused, but I kept going as this was a Nano-based server, anti-Nano. All of a sudden, I get demoted and warned. I was an admin now, and of course I got frustrated. Wasn't this a server we made to spite Nano and to let victims come forth? They explained to me there will be no further talk of Nano, and the server is drifting away from it. It was only a week and a half, and they were writing the popularity of the suffering of victims and making it all about gaming. I complained, obviously, being a victim myself. What with Nano stealing friends, boyfriends, now this server, because as you'll see later, they were actually just in contact with Nano, which is just ridiculous. It's insane. He also started lying around this time to make him feel better. Well, to be fair, he was always lying. I was demoted twice before leaving on my own terms. Like I said, around this time he was aggressively pulling people away from me and spreading shit I wouldn't even dream of spreading. I sat around crying, no one standing up for me, before I just said fuck it and went directly to Nano myself. I told him to stop with the revenge plot, the sick, stupid fantasy of making me regret breaking it off with him. He told me he might stop under one condition, and that was for a video of me pissing and a video of me stroking myself off. He had a massive piss kink, and he loved telling people about it. I had seen his plenty, and because he was just a horny kid bragging about his abnormally small penis, I was disturbed but also just done with it all and took the videos, sending it to him shortly after. He complimented me and supposedly saved it, and I asked him if he can stop. He says no, explaining that he didn't promise that he would. He only said maybe, and I left defeated. If there is anything you'll learn about Nano in this whole story in the possible coming weeks, he will never take accountability for anything he's done, especially not after he's been called out. Now comes the hardest part of it all. We're looking at the document he released on me in 2021 entitled That One Crazy Stalker X. That document is spread into multiple documents. That name is ridiculous. Oh my god. It's spread into multiple situations, including the lowest point of my life. Sometime in 2020, I messaged him saying I really needed him and he rejected me, which really hurt me back then. I had been through a cycle of abusive lover after abusive lover, and since my home life was exactly that, I knew that even though he constantly chewed me up and spit me out, I still had this strange we can start over vibes with him. I can fix him. It hurts to see the lowest point of my life out there in the open, but I'm not that person anymore. I've always struggled to find someone who understood me, my illnesses, and my heart. I thought about having someone who was more like my home life, might give me a homely feel, as I did with my exes. It was a vicious cycle that I kept up even till last year. It's horrifying to use this as a "this guy seriously sucks, he likes me after I abused him" moment. That's just pure psychopathic behavior. The next part is a bit sneaky and he really tried wiggling out of any apology here. This part is where I criticize him for being a Discord bot terrorist, cheater, and manipulator. He navigates it almost smartly, but couldn't shake off the allegation I wanted a confession of. I showed him a screenshot of him confessing to the purging of Yif, and at that point he owned it after Mitch was dethroned. And that's when he destroyed it. He took pictures before it was purged, basically basking in the glory of it being gone and rubbing it in people's faces, including me. It was unfortunate that it's been so long since these days, or I'd have pictures of him destroying other people's servers he'd get mad at as well. That's the most soul-crushing thing that kept me from making this. It's my words against a used to be washed up household manipulative abuser. No one remembers his dark ages spare a few friends. Even one that I just met yesterday told me their story, and it's just scary. Nano does this thing when he knows he's wrong. He'll ask almost impossible questions for me to answer, like names of people he hurt despite the years gap. Exactly everything he's ever done, and if you answer any single one, he gives the "but look what you did" debate. It's soul crushing to me as someone who cracks under pressure and can't remember much whenever I'm anxious. The only reason I'm so calm now is I've had years to think about this and write out my experiences. It's a shame we're in an era where victims are still scared of their abusers, and it takes massive amounts of courage to stand up. He does the whole "am I abusing you now though" thing, and it gets old quick. The next screenshots are me being horny to a guy who didn't reciprocate my feelings, which is just a shame because I know that Nano used to do the same things, and I realized I was becoming my abuser. I was wanting sexual feelings from someone who didn't want it, and I'm ashamed for that, for sure. I was a kid like anyone else, but thankfully I never stooped to blackmail and abuse. It's horrible for sure, but I'll hold that in stride, and I bettered myself since then. The next part is addressing a screenshot from 6 a.m., which in itself definitely shows. He again floods it with only basic questions: who, what, when, where, why, how type shit. I call him a pretend pedo, but because for some reason he was still dating younger people in public and showing them off while pretending to be older, causing mayhem to people who thought it was a pedophile showing off his prey. Then there's him saying, "No, I'm not a blackmailer," and the single blackmail he did wasn't that bad, guys. It wasn't that bad. He forgives him, and he'll send proof, which is easy to fake on his end. He used to be widely known as the guy who would Photoshop images to get what he wants. Back when he was sea salt and Toxie, he'd cry wolf and get everyone to rattle against me for any statement I made. Case in point, Berube Swagos. Nano once had Berube tweet something out, shunning me and calling me a terrible abusive dick. Berube is a good friend to me these days, and one day I confronted him in front of everybody in the Fur Lounge, really angrily. To my surprise, he completely apologized and actually admitted he only did what he did because Nano had apparently begged him time and time again to. The reason he was so upset when we talked on Discord right after the tweet was apparently because he was pissed off at Nano. Since Berube had apologized, I felt a bit better, but not before Berube had quietly removed him from his server. Another thing he brings up is purging, which he has done multiple times, as he deleted my Bud server and one guy he didn't like by adding a shitty bot. And the cheating. Oh boy, the cheating. He denies it all, which is beyond dumb. He adds that he heard that I cheated, but can't confirm it, which I'll go ahead and clear up now. I had a bad case where that's all I was doing, was cheating, with terrible boyfriends and a bad home life mixed with Nano stalking me and sitting in multiple servers under his aliases, taunting me with it. I felt like no one would respect me. I needed stimulation and comfort, but there was always that underlying sliminess underneath everything. I even had an issue with my current BF and future husband where I couldn't stop the cycle. At the beginning, I came out of a massively abusive partnership where I was given a wedding band, asked to marry him, and he cheats and leaves 4 weeks later. It was a closed relationship, but I had given him more than I care to share here. So yeah, I continued the cycle of abuse until I turned 19, where I wisened up. The reason my boyfriend and I got together was to become dads and make something out of ourselves. I want to adopt a kid or make one ourselves and break my cycle of making stupid decisions and grow the fuck up. I stopped cheating, I stopped being cynical, and I stopped arguing so much. My life couldn't be any better, and it wouldn't be this good if I stayed with these people. The apology I wanted isn't here, of course, but instead him owning up to the one and only thing he could get away with, and that's lying about his age. Of course, he had to say that I was worse and try and spit on me, and he ends it saying people can change, and he has, and we'll get to that hypocritic statement in a second, but also it says he saw more in me. Reading this makes me definitely saddened, as despite the massive monster of an abuser he is, I didn't think he could have been more condescending. He still wants to be the victim. After making a documentary on Cody DeYean, I started shaking. He had Nanofaux on his Twitter, and I wasn't ready for what he'd do, as he would always rally support against a smaller person, whether it's justified or not. I got over the fear, but saw he did give him the document I just read off of. The document will be in the description below, as I'd rather let you see it for yourselves and judge for yourself. I'm not hiding a damn thing. Nano. This is the guy who lied to everyone using his name, or about his name, location, and whole identity, including committing identification fraud using his grandmother's ID. And with his recent postings about him shooting guns awfully on his Twitter, I became a lot more relaxed about whether it was worth it or not to post this video. But it's not over yet. I was forced into an awful situation when Nano joined a server I admin for, and I freaked out. I had just gotten used to the atmosphere. Considering leaving, I talked to the owner, who didn't want to choose. I sat for a minute to think, and in a smart move, I told them I'd let him in if he could apologize. I asked for a voice chat, and they agreed. He all of a sudden couldn't make it to the call, but he could text frighteningly fast. I commented on his fast typing, and he immediately went on the attack. He was too much of a coward to talk to me face to face, backing down from the call, and of course, he asked who, what, when, where, why, how. Since the deal was broken, I basically smiled and looked towards the owner, saying, "I'm glad I could show you that people like him don't change," and left the chat. And the owner apologized and kind of made it seem like he was the victim, rolling into bed and saying he was crying. I was forced into a situation that I used to show him how much he hadn't changed. The owner knew everything that he's done, but he wanted to see if Nano really had changed. Seeing he hadn't, Nano was banned, and that's the first time I got a big win with Nano ever. Throughout all the harm and the backstabbing, I got a win. This is going to be the last time I comment on this situation, as I know what kind of person Nano is. Egomaniac who will defend to the grave, and my only goal is to tell my story and continue with my life and become the dad that my dad never was. Hi furs. Today I want to discuss the video My Testimony Against Nanofaux, as well as show proof for some claims that were once lost to time, and extra details I never even remembered. I had done a lot to get this info back, but I could not be happier to see it again. If you don't know what Nano did, go watch that video or stick around for some more of the claims. The Nanofaux video was very much just me recalling my experiences, and acted less of a documentary, or more a way to help myself deal with the horrors that were thrust upon me by Cecil, Toxie, Nat, or now known as Nano. The video was confession style, and hurt me to even talk about. I also pointed out my own faults to show I wasn't even hiding anything. despite the low view count, I had people come forward with their own stories, some so horrible that they asked for themselves to be removed from this video. The amount of absolute malice behind everything Nano does makes it easy to tell his intentions earlier on. One of the claims I made was that he was using his grandmother's identification to get into NSFW servers, which I'm unsure how to proceed here. I have the identification, pictures of him holding it, and with his old Discord username Toxie on a piece of paper. I was told that his real name was Hunter, and I've seen a picture of him, so I'm gonna go ahead and show the pictures of them with the foresight he's gonna call it doxing, despite it being something he gave out willy-nilly. I won't show his face, but I will show him faking an identification. The part that confuses me is that date doesn't have a grandma date, and it says it was born in 2000. This is awful. This means that he actually created a fake ID and spread it around to pretend he was older than he was. That's a pretty hefty crime there, and one that still baffles me to this day. Like, bro, you couldn't get your rocks off on E621, had to go r/yif. I assume the reason was to get more victims to join his Scott Pilgrim Evil X gang that he shits on to this day. In this screenshot of Mitch, who was the guy who dated me, spit abuse all over me, and tried acting like I was the abuser, you can see Nano going by his Toxie alt at the time, with I love you Danny in his title. He would always do this shit. He had a big thing for me for a while, where he was in love with me completely and was willing to throw everything away just for me, and I never, ever gave up. This was him giving up the YIF server to Nano, him taking it and deleting it, which in DMs he's admitted for doing, for the sole purpose of someone calling him out for being underage. And in case he tries spinning this on me, here's the image of the server being transferred to his hands. The next screenshot I dug up was another victim of Nano, who unfortunately I could not get a hold of, as their account had been deleted, but it stands true nonetheless. A lot of what I said in my testimony was out of place, but the sentiment is still the same. When it comes to memories, you're more inclined to remember them in different places because you're focusing on the horrors of that event instead of the date. The victim says that he cheated on him multiple times and tried to force money out of him. From what I hear of Nano's ex-friends and IRL friends nowadays, he's a money drifter. He lives in Florida usually, where his rich parents spoil him and send him to the top university in all of Florida. He goes down to Boston for the summer to meet his friends, who I've talked to. They hate him and play airsoft and go to fur cons. He doesn't have his own suit, but he gets a new iPhone every year, which is just ridiculous. He's an incredibly privileged person who only hangs out with people if it benefits him in some way. Here is a victim's own words on what Nano has done to them, and please be respectful.
When I met Nano a few years ago, he was a local fur to me. We talked on Telegram mostly before we met in person on a hot summer night. We walked around and talked about life experiences and such before we went back to the house. Back there, I showed him my room and my PC and such. Turns out we both knew the same person, I would come to find out. I was starting to get tired because I had school the next day, so I tried to kick him out, but he just kept talking to me. I finally gave in to watching some TV on the couch. During this time, he laid his head on my lap, which is fine if I knew him a bit longer, but this is the first time we met, so it was a little strange, but I tried not to think about it because it was late. After the show, I woke him up and helped him get home. Now, I'm very clear about being taken. I had pictures up and everything. I'm not sure if he was jealous or it was just a random thing, but I would come to find out that he would tell our mutual friend that I slept with him. That mutual friend threatened to tell my boyfriend at the time, but I tried to explain to the mutual friend that it didn't happen like that, and nothing happened but decided not to believe me. I would come back to find deleted messages and such that would have proven my innocence deleted, and I ended up disappearing for a long time due to the massive drama. Still haven't been active very often because of that happening.
He tried getting me to let him be admin in one of the servers he was previously banned in so that he could destroy it by blackmailing me here in this screenshot. The context is that I told him Mitch forced me and another bad ex apart by tricking me, and he used it as leverage. I remember the rest of what he said, even if those DMs are far lost and could only find pieces of it out there in other DMs. He told me he'd reveal the secrets of everyone in the server, including the owners Le Fleur and Floofy cheating on each other, Lamau, and various mental issues and problems just spilled out there. The reason he wanted them was because, or he had them, was because he was the server therapist, quote unquote, and used it behind the scenes to get what he wants. I was given this ultimate decision to let Yif die, which wasn't my server to begin with, or let everyone else's secrets be free. I knew most people wouldn't like it, but I kept Yif alive, and I let him spill every secret, and the funny thing is, everyone came to terms with it. LeFly and Floofy forgave each other. My boyfriend at the time didn't care, and everyone came around to the decision within an hour, saying it's basically free venting. So while Nano thinks he won that time, it was still pretty in our odds. Mind you, I sadly, maybe not sadly, have the evidence of him blackmailing me with the piss video and cum video the second time, as that was on a definitely gone alt, but I did find the videos that he asked for saved on my Google Drive. I was pretty torn on seeing it, as it was from a long time ago, and had to make the decision to delete them and not have the evidence around anymore. It's hurt me more than fucking anything to let that go, but I do not have a way to show it, being as private as I am with my body nowadays. As well as the fact I was underage, and it's not okay to have that. This screenshot may be hard to read, but that's because of how I screenshotted them. They turned out okay. This is a soft admission of him deleting my server, which absolutely thrills me. I've been wanting this for so long. He's always tried to cover all of his tracks pretty decently, but I definitely caught him here. It starts with me making fun of him for having his own server nuked one time and saying it was funny. And oh, it fucking was. I then describe his actions, and he nitpicks by saying, emails, lol, like that was the most absurd part of it. He does not deny anything, and even teases his wrongdoing by saying, then stop complaining about your server. If it's funny when it happens to someone else, it's funny when it happens to you. If you were wondering about the emails part, I was referring to him sending DMs to everyone he disliked, giving his blooming first Discord server link and saying that he was the one to shut down Yif. In 2020, he friended back and asked to be friends. I, of course, was disgusted by that answer. But around this time, I had that Stockholm syndrome from his abuse and wanted him, so I was conflicted. This is where I told him I was angry, because he and his friends made an anti-pyro group, my old Discord username, where they would all bitch about me because of things Nano and company would say. I never saw how many people were there. I don't think there was more than 5. He doesn't take responsibility and says they haven't talked there in years, which is untrue because it was made the year before, and they would plan the downfall of me every week from an inside source I had there, former friend. I say underneath that he and that group took some friends away, which would make sense because it's a cavalcade of misinformation. If you were confronted with that, you'd be pretty persuaded too, I think. In this screenshot, he asks, again, to be friends in the same year, and teasing me that his servers reached 2.1k members. Back in the day, he had platinum status on one of the Discord bumping sites so that he'd always be on top, which is expensive, and considering Nano still doesn't have a job, it's from his parents or sugar daddies. I showed this to show proof that he owned the Blooming Furs of Discord, which the link for it doesn't go through anymore on the bumping website Discord Me. He turned 18 in 2022, I'm certain, so he had to have dropped that server as soon as he added NSFW, because it's been gone for a while. Either that, or he was operating an NSFW server while still being a child, something I thought he would know better from Yif. I'm leaning on the second option, as he's a pretty big infamous porn hoarder, getting NSFW art every single month till I stopped talking to him. Which, mind you, he was again underage, and as far as my knowledge goes, I never once got NSFW art done as a kid, and thank fuck. If I had art done on myself as a kid, I would never forgive myself. By the way, side topic, he is still friends with this Toast guy on Twitter, and his IRL friends said they've maybe met him. If you didn't know, Toast is the sidekick to Nano, at least back in the day, and helped him with harassment and lets Nano step all over him for years. I remember him being so revolting and unapologetically evil and simpy for Nano that my memories of him are all cuss words, slurs, and harassing to the absolute fullest. I always hated that this guy of all people got away with everything. But it makes me happy since he's not that popular. It seems maybe he's only an ass on Twitter and kept his sidekick energy down since then. But that uncanny, evil looking profile picture has always been the same as the first time I ever met him. So think of that as you will. Here on screen is a screenshot of a convo between me and Nano's alt by the name of Nat, again in 2020. He acts babyish and even drops a slur, the N-word. This again proves my admission in my testimony, where I said he used it quite often against people and his black ex. Though I gave him a point, saying he didn't mean it maliciously probably. Yeah, that's gone. He's clearly hiding on an alt and saying this just to piss me off. He tries to say it's not him, but he lives close to Nano, which I confirmed that it was Nano by friends, which he broke character with. This is super weird. I hope to God this baby thing isn't a kink for him and related to his well-known water sports kink. I call him out and say it ain't helping with his underage theory, which at this point in time, it wasn't known he was a kid still. So I got him dead to rights here. This screenshot isn't too important, but it shows he loved throwing numbers of his server at me, as that's something he uses to make people feel worthless. He says he's not underage, and he deleted the YIF server for the sole reason that Mitch called him underaged. He also says I edited the picture of him saying he was 14 just to discredit me and throw me under the bus. Considering Nano was the one always photoshopping proof, I'm still shocked he tried to throw it on me. He makes fun of the resolution because I take screenshots on mobile, and that particular screenshot had been shared around so much that it artifacted into this mess. In that screenshot, I also dropped the name of his ex who he cheated on, abused, and threw away the moment he fought back. I also pull his psych card and say I had people there to make him paranoid. I'm not sure if I did, but he did the same to me lots of times. Thought it'd be nice to make him feel how I felt. Also in this screenshot, you can now see that, yes, Nanofaux has an alt by the name of Nanofaux, and that was his original Nanofaux account. He has alts up the ass and is committing ban evasion constantly by doing risky things now on his alt. If I never brought this up, he has like 10 banned accounts. This screenshot shows a couple important things, one of which being a friend telling me about his alt account, Nat, which was the one where he dropped the N-word and acted all baby-like. Having that confirmation at the time was pretty great and helped long-term, till now. He also brings up the fact that Lukey got dumped and removed, and he came back throwing insults. I would sympathize with him here, as getting dropped and thrown away like nothing would hurt anybody. He then sends an image of Nat saying something, but really not important. It wasn't proof. I got that proof later. This screenshot confirms one big thing for me, and that's that everyone here was an asshole, to be honest. Beep is Le Fleur, Boomer is his French asshole ex Floofy. They all have bots, but it definitely confirmed for me the name of his server, NukerBot. He nuked Yif one time and banned over 500 people with his bot, Naughty Body. If you look up Nanofaux nowadays, you'll find he is still a coder and has the bot coder badge on Discord. He was an insanely sexual individual, and even called his bots sexual shit when he was younger. I mean, yeah, naughty body, with features to show NSFW pics and stuff of that sort, as well as nuking servers when it was made to a mod status. This screenshot thankfully proves that he was absolutely crazy for me, even after everything he did to me. Don't ask me how we kept ending up in groups together. It's kind of ridiculous at this point. At the time, I was also great at ruining relationships. This was one of the rare times where I wasn't abused, but just dropped. Instead, Nano tried slipping into a poly with me, even though I was reluctant to do so. Nano was absolutely obsessed with me, trying to get my attention and be with me any second he possibly could. The thing about Nano is, I don't even think he knows, by the way, is every time someone loved him, he brushed them off and lost interest. He loves to try getting attention and dating people who aren't into him. For some reason, he lives for that. He did the same with a former friend, Nova Glory, who absolutely loved him, but since he liked him, Nano kept rejecting him and doing the same thing he did when I liked him, basically make him feel like shit. The funny thing is, I also had this for a long time myself. Whenever I'm loved by my boyfriend, I get depressed and think about all of my PTSD, abuse, and exes, telling him I don't deserve it before he tells me I'm worth it, and just think of the past as a scar, unimportant, and exists to only tell a story, best kept under a shirt. And here comes the best part. Our server always made memes about Nano, who at the time was known as Sea Salt, yes, like the dog, and oh boy, they're juicy. Whatever, no one cares, I'ma go. See, nobody cares. He was always threatening to go, and was an attention hog, and the face of Max Payne is my ex. Wait, what to do? Be Salt's pet, be free, or be Wade's pet. This made fun of the fact that Salt kept asking me out and trying to take me from Wade or join a poly. The Gab Sheba profile picture is me, by the way. This one is just simple, block Salt. It was, and still is, a great idea. This one reveals that Wade didn't want him in a poly with us. Absolutely shocking. Pimples? 0. Blackheads? 0. My love for Salt? 0. This last one was my favorite. Back in the day, Nano banned my name from his server just to keep people from using his bot to hug me. He was always trying to gatekeep me from dating or getting interested in other people, and this shows it absolutely best. When I made my video about Cody Yeen, formerly known as Cody Duh Yeen, Cody reached out to Nano and told him his situation, and Nano gave him a document he could use against me. This document I fully covered in my testimony, and even linked that document to show I wasn't even hiding anything, and that I've changed and what he got wrong. Nano joined his server, and I freaked out, telling him I wasn't ready yet, as I was a mod there, and he tried forcing me to like him and be friends with him. Cody admitted later that he totally did it because Nano had his nudes, and he was scared of what Nano would do to him. And I texted with Nano. Nano simply just didn't admit to anything, and I took his hostility and failure to ask reasonable questions as a win, and Cody banned him from the server. Nano was found 2 years ago saying he did all this, or not this, but everything before, in a private coding server. Everything that people were saying back then, he admitted to, of course being non-specific, but that's why Cody banned him. He knew Nano hadn't changed and he had lied once again. And I will give props to Cody for that, despite us not being friends anymore. I'll let you know why someday. Considering he's never responded to my testimony against him, I think he knows he's down the shitter with this one. He's failed to do anything, and all of his victims may make their own testimony against him, given the barrier and unspoken rule to not cross Nano has been broken. My hope is that he actually gets what's coming to him, and people will see this video in the future and recognize that he's not changed and drop him for good. I have shown a lot against Nano, and I hope that he finally says sorry and recognizes his faults, except this time when he does, there will be no talk of friendship or forgiving. That's 5 years out of date. Remember to listen to victims and hold abusers to their actions. And have a good night first.